Welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Fawadi Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, we're going to give you some big culture highlights talking about some of the things that are happening right now. There is a student loan protest that is happening, gathering together in front of the Supreme Court because of that big decision they made today about not allowing that student loan plan to happen. So we're seeing some movement out there. We'll show you the latest footage from that. Also, Vice President Harris and Treasury Secretary Yellen will be at Essence Fest today, talking to Black folks about the economic agenda of Black America. Later, we check in with Mayor Nathaniel Booker of Maywood, Illinois, to talk to us about the work that he's doing in his city. And let's have that big culture convo. Let's talk about the Supreme Court stopping student loan debt, that student loan debt plan from President Biden. We're going to be checking in with Corinna Denise, our culture crew member and college admissions advisor, as well as Mr. Zach Geist, who has been in the space of student loans for over a decade, to get their thoughts. And of course, I want to have you joining us in that conversation as well. So stay with us. That's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Fawadi Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. First and foremost, happy Friday. I'm so happy that today is Friday, so I appreciate you for checking in. Folks, we got a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into it, as there are a number of stories that we're watching, that we're taking a look at. And of course, our big culture convo for today is about the Supreme Court. Once again, they're just rolling out these major decisions. They're going to be talking, we're going to have a conversation about the Supreme Court and them striking down President Biden's student loan debt plan that was to relieve millions of dollars from student loan borrowers. So we're going to have that conversation in a little bit. But first, let's talk a little bit about what is happening in response to that major decision. We want to go to sharing some footage provided by the Associated Press about what's happening in front of the Supreme Court of the United States in Washington, D.C. Earlier today, there was some movement. Looks like folks were gathering to possibly do a major protest in front of the High Court in response to the situation. Let's take a look here. There's some movement out here, folks. And if you can see that, that's live, folks, live feed from Washington, D.C., as folks are checking in, walking around. Not as much that you would expect. And I'm going to go back to my original premise on this, crew. I remember when the abortion decision came down, there was a lot of people that was in front of the Supreme Court that same day. Here, we're just seeing some scatterings of folks, some small movement of folks, but nothing to the point where you're stopping traffic or cause a major disruption. But this is all in response to that big decision that came down from the Supreme Court earlier today about them striking down the idea of the federal government relieving millions of student loan borrowers of their debt. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this major decision later on in the show. And I'm going to have some dynamic voices for you. But of course, no conversation will be complete without you. So we'll make sure that you have your say as we look at this historic moment in our country. Now, in other news, let's talk a little bit about what's going on. If you did not know, one of the big major cultural events of the summer, Essence Fest, is underway down in New Orleans, and there's a lot of conversation, a lot of excitement about this year's festivities, especially around the 50th anniversary of hip hop and so much more. But also today is going to be the day when Vice President Kamala Harris and U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen will both be making an appearance at the festival to talk to as part of the Global Economic Forum that Essence Fest is hosting today. And they're going to lay out the plans, the economic agenda that they have in mind for Black America. So we're keeping our eyes out on both of those things. But the piece around the student loan debt, we're streaming live. If there are any information, anything that's coming out about that, folks, I want y'all to keep your eyes close on blackstarnetwork.com as we're streaming that, everything that's happening there down at the Supreme Court. But then just keep your eyes open on what's going to be said in regards to at the Essence Fest for the Global Economic Forum and the economic future for Black America. Also, folks, as we kind of give you an update, the president is expected to speak just for a few minutes later on, and I think at around the 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time time frame. The president is expected to share some words, and we will certainly keep you up to date on that. So I don't want us to jump into the conversation just yet. I know, folks, this is a big discussion, especially given the week that we've had in terms of these major decisions coming down from the Supreme Court. Yesterday, we talked about affirmative action not being affirmative action not being used for college admissions. Now we get hit with this. So there's going to be a lot of discussion that we're going to have. But I do want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that this is only another sign for us to really come up with an economic agenda. And I think that the fact that Vice President Harris and U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen making their appearance to Essence Fest goers and participants, I think that it's a sign that there needs to be a bigger discussion in this country about the economic future for Black America. So, folks, I want y'all to join me in the conversation right now. Post your comments on our YouTube page as we're streaming live under Roland Martin. Just go to Roland Martin's YouTube page. We're streaming live under there. Post your comments. I see so many of my Culture Crew members checking in. Deidre, Damon, thank you. Janelle, thank you. My man, brother Willie Frazier, I see you. Pretty Brown Mimi 726, I see you. Who else? McCall, I got you. I see you. Thank you for checking in. Sis Real Brooklyn, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for checking in. Tiana, Monkey Confessions, thank you. And folks, I want to see and hear from you. Make sure you join us in the conversation about what's going on. And I'm just keeping my eyes open. I'm keeping my eyes open. Really, let me be honest with y'all. I'm trying to just brace myself because it feels like we just had one of those weeks, right? This has been a hell of a week in terms of trying to see how far or the type of progress that our country is going to be making. And so when you see these big decisions coming down, more importantly, when you see the climate that's growing and that's emerging around some of these big decisions, it makes you think twice. And I hope all of us, and so many of you who are already involved and engaged in your communities, you work in the areas of social justice, even if you don't work in the activism space, you are informed and conscious and aware of all of these things. We really do have to take a quick moment. And I was talking to my guy, King Keenan, earlier today, and we were just sharing, just kind of looking at what's happening culturally, what's happening nationally. And all of this stuff makes you think about, okay, what is my position? What will be my stats? Let me reevaluate where I am on this thing, right? Because it just can't be us getting mad, going on social media, expressing our displeasure, our disappointment, or expressing how we feel, and then that's it. This, if nothing else, for me, is a clarion call for us to get more involved. If nothing else, to get more involved in what we're seeing, get more involved in the work that we're doing, and getting more involved in getting our people and getting all people really informed and conscious about these things. This stuff is This stuff is happening. And one of the things my man Keenan was talking to me about, he's like, man, we so distracted. We talking about all this other stuff that's happening in this country, that's happening within the culture. But the reality is laws are being changed, rights are being taken. There is an all-out assault on our humanity. There's an all-out assault on our blackness. There's an all-out assault on our citizenry. So we got to figure out what is going to be our role in this. All right, let me go to, I think a couple of people have checked in. Sister Sandra Muhammad, thank you for checking in. You said campaign appearance, that's all that it is. Will they discuss reparations? Doubt it. Talking about Vice President Kamala Harris and U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen being at the Global Economic Forum in New Orleans at Essence Fest. No, I doubt it. Sister Sandra, I doubt it. Truly doubt that is going to be a part of the conversation. But it doesn't mean that we should stop talking about it, right? It doesn't mean that we should not keep pushing that to be at the forefront of the agenda or part of the forefront of the agenda. So if they're not saying nothing, then we have to say something. I appreciate you, Sister Sandra. Thank you. Monkey Confessions, you checked in and said a plan for Black Americans or for Black and brown people of color. Well, we will have to see. It's both, I think. I think it's for both, but it could be for one or the other. But something has to be, I think we need to hear what the plan is and then figure it out, how we're going to move forward. Monkey Confessions, thank you. Carol McNeil, you checked in and said, remember that song, If I Could Turn Back Time? It's a damn shame. How about that? If I Can Turn, wasn't that Celine Dion? I think it was. Yeah, I think it might have been. And Lori, thank you so much for checking in, Carol. Laura, you checked it and said, next on the Supreme Court docket, I got 5 on it. Brown versus the Board of Education. Ouch. Actually, next on the docket is talking about the Second Amendment right and domestic violence. We will have to see. All right, folks, look, those are the things that we keep an eye on. So again, if you haven't, let your family and friends know Black Star Network. We're streaming live around the Supreme Court. We'll certainly get into more conversation about what will be said relating to the economic future of Black America at Essence Fest, and we'll continue to have those conversations. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to check in with the mayor of Maywood, Illinois, Mayor Nathaniel Booker, to talk to us about the work that he's doing. And let's get his take from the Mr. Mayor about affirmative action, student loan debts, and so much more. So stay with us. We're just getting started here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind $100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Faraji Muhammad. Wanted to kick off the big discussions first with our very, very special guest who serves as the mayor of the great city of Maywood, Illinois. I'm so happy to have joining us today Mayor Nathaniel Booker from Maywood. Mr. Mayor, good afternoon. How are you, sir?
Good afternoon. How you doing today?
I'm good, brother. I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. First and foremost, Mr. Mayor, we wanted to chat with you about a number of things. We know that you were a part of that group of folks that convened in Ohio just a few weeks ago around the Mayor's Conference, the U.S. Conference of Mayors that happens throughout the year. But you know, going back to this, to your respective home and your citizens there, talk to us about what are some of the big things that you took away from that conference and networking with your colleagues from around the country.
Absolutely. So the U.S. Conference of Mayors is an opportunity to bring like the best of the table of you don't know what you don't know, and you're really not thinking about what you're not thinking about in aspects of federal funding, federal access of resources. A lot of times on a local government scale, you're so busy focusing on what those day-to-day emergencies are that really when you go to these types of conferences and you find out about the various resources that can come and help with workforce development, help with mental health, help with different things that can revitalize your community or help with infrastructure. The U.S. Conference of Mayors is one of those things that we enjoyed in Columbus, Ohio. So all of those things are what I took back, various resources of how we can build upon what we're already doing. When you look at U.S. Conference of Mayors, you know, across the nation, we have over 19,000 communities and over 90% of them are less than 50,000 residents. So when you go to U.S. Conference of Mayors, they're focused on larger cities, but really you take a lot away to your smaller communities that no other opportunity aside from others would be able to bring those things to light for you.
Absolutely. So it's a little professional development for folks like yourself.
Yeah, man. It's for folks like myself. It's one of those, like, again, like I say, the small communities, you don't have the budget to go to all these conferences. No, nobody wants you to go out of town because they think you should be right there in the community all day, every day already, right?
Yeah.
So when you go out and you learn certain things, you're like, oh, that's how we got $40 million, or oh, that's how we got $10 million. Then it makes it better. But when you don't present your community nor yourself nor relationships, because it's all a lot of relationship and collaboration building at the same time as well.
Right.
So if you aren't putting yourself out there and nobody's putting your community out there for you, then that's how you lose at times. And I think a lot of times we try to stay so knit to where we are versus exploring where we could go. It kind of hurts us.
Absolutely. Speaking of things that hurting us, we know that all across this country, Mr. Mayor, violence continues to be an issue. It continues to be one of the number one, and I'm from the East Coast, I'm from Baltimore, relocated to Los Angeles, but violence still tends to be on both sides of the country, from the north to the south, from the east to the west, from the Midwest all the way. And you know, there was some recent a recent study that showed that violence, inner city violence, is one of the number one factors for death among young Black men and women. And I wanted to kind of get your take on that because, you know, when we were doing some research for this conversation with you, we saw that unfortunately Maywood is not outside of that situation at all. Coming from Baltimore, I grew up in a violent city, but I was blessed not to have that in those type of interactions. But for a city like Maywood, talk to us a little bit about the impact of violence. And our hearts and prayers go out. I think y'all had a major shooting at a funeral just not too long ago. So my hearts and prayers go out to that family and condolences. But talk to us about the impact of violence in your city.
Yeah, so I think it's a two-part. One, I think it's more so like a narrative changer, but it's also like looking at the realities of the realities. A quick example is like even when you mentioned that shooting that happened inside of a church that happened with Chicago city residents that has absolutely nothing to do with Maywood. That makes headline news, right?
Right, yeah.
But the 63% decline in homicides that we had last year, crickets. The 90% decrease in homicides that we're at this year, absolute crickets. Somebody from the city of Chicago come to the west suburbs that's 10 minutes away from Chicago, and a family altercation, it's not gang violence, a family altercation leads to somebody getting shot in the foot. Nobody died. So it wasn't a condolence to give.
Oh.
A family altercation from the city of Chicago that came to a church in Maywood that they ended up going to a hospital. That is news. But the fact that we are no longer at 20 homicides, 25 homicides, 30 homicides, to this year we only have one homicide. Nobody's talking about that. So I think at times it becomes like that narrative driver because we have 14 other communities around us. Some have also had homicides as well, but they're not Black. So they don't make headline news. So I think when we talk about the narrative of our communities, at times we as Black people become so quick to say, yeah, we got homicides. So I can say we are down double digits in every aspect of crime, except for domestic abuse. And that to me, I put on mental health, right? But when you look at carjackings, when you look at shots fired, when you look at homicides, when you look at those, we are double digit down in everything. We are literally only at one homicide. Maywood has not been at one homicide at the end of June in over a decade. So I think it's also the narrative that we choose to put on our communities, because a lot of times the communities right next door that are at 3 or 4, not going to mention who they are, nobody's talking about it, but we make sure we talk about it. And I think we just have to go into that thought process of when you think you're trying to truly revitalize the community, let's talk about the positive things that are happening. But we're so used to being sad and we're so used to being distraught or frustrated that that's the easiest thing we can all get around. And I really want that to change, not just for Maywood, but for the Black community to begin with. Because if you look at multiple different cities and multiple different areas, crime is down. But because that's the fear tactic that people want to run with, or that's the making us feel hopeless tactic that we continue to strive for, that's the narrative that gets painted.
Well, Mr. Man, first, I can stand corrected with the condolences, so I appreciate you giving me some. No, it's good, brother. I mean, I'm not too big to be corrected, so I thank you so much for that, bro. But the point that you're making is it about the narrative, the conversation about the narrative. Do you think that as Black folks in this country, we have allowed, whether consciously or unconsciously, allowed that narrative to be embraced? Do you think that we are doing our due diligence in fighting against that narrative?
Nope. I would say like it's one of those intentional and unintentional negligence, because we want everybody to see that we are in a state of emergency, right? Which we are, right? We are an underserved, disadvantaged community, no matter across the board where you want to go. You want to talk about healthcare, you want to talk about food access. Look at Chicago right now. We're going to talk about the fact that Walmart chose to close 4 stores because they were low performing. Or are we actually going to talk about the fact that those stores closed because they were receiving incentives that were being expired, and being in a Black community is only good enough if we're getting an incentive for it? So the same businesses and the same investors and the same contractors that are willing to go to the more affluent communities, they come right over to the Black community like, what can I get for this? I don't feel like being involved with this unless you give me something. But they'll go build 5 miles up right next door and not close, right? So I think when we do our narrative, we have to stop attacking each other, and we have to stop pointing to our worst moments in life and focus on those things that make us great. And I think that we definitely have an issue in narrative.
An issue in narrative. That's interesting, Mr. Man, because, you know, people would attribute the violence in our community to so many other things, right? And I am in total and full agreement when you said that we love to kind of harp on the negative. And it's unfortunate because we harp on the negatives to our own detriment. But when some good things come to light, it also takes when good things happen, we don't get too excited because we're like, that was just like an outlier of the situation, and that's not a regular thing. What we regularly see is black folks boom, 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 and so culturally, I think that's the biggest or the hardest thing to get across culturally. Now, it may not be true. Your data, and look, in Baltimore, when the police commissioner, when the mayor said, you know, violence is down, this is down, this is down. Culturally, people looked through that lens and said, that's a bunch of BS. Culturally, because our culture is it plays so much of a part of how we see things and how we see the world. And we don't even know it. We don't even know. Look, I was having a conversation with my engineer, my guy Keenan today, and he was like, and I hope he don't get mad for me saying this, but look, he was talking to his son about how black men, as black men interact. And that when we come into the space of one another, we're not embracing, we don't come into the space of, that's my man, that's my brother. We come into the space with doubt and suspicion.
What is that? What are you here for?
And he was teaching his son, he was like, that's not how you want to get to wait, he was telling his son, he said, son, see, that's the problem. You have to consciously check yourself every time you come across a black man or a young black man in the street to check to see, am I coming to the situation, coming to this interaction with doubt and suspicion, waiting for something to happen, something bad to happen, or am I coming to this situation with open arms and love? And unfortunately, you know, we choose the former rather than the latter.
Yeah, I think so. Even when I think of the things like the U.S. Conference of Mayors, going to those types of conferences, it's real crazy how sometimes it can be a room of 50 people and only like 2 or 3 are black, right? So even though we are these predominant black communities, we still are choosing not to be in the rooms that get us the resources that we can get. And I think big parts of coming to the communities, understanding that we have issues that are bigger than others, and we have issues that have been strategically disenfranchised on. Like if you think about what Jackson, Mississippi goes through, when you think about what St. Louis, Missouri goes through, they deal with being deprived on a statewide level. So even though you're a local government, even though you're the major city, you still have to deal with state legislation. Look at just what happened in Nashville, right? In Tennessee, that was on some statewide level racism and oppression that still exists today. So when we go into the local level type fights, it becomes you have to trust in God and know that there are more for you than against you.
Yeah.
But golly, do it not be hard when you actually have more people that don't look like you supporting you, that the people that look like you doubting you and salivating, waiting for you to fail.
That's
so
right.
I think when you go to the types of conferences such as the USCM, it provides you that resource of like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is possible. Okay, I knew that there was a way to fund this. Thank you for letting me know how to do that. Oh, you all have this program running and operating, and we were thinking about doing it, but y'all have it operating and funded. How do we do that? And I think when you go to those types of conferences, and the type of conference I was in Columbus, that's personally what I take home. I take home what I can't get from other people who have been in office for years, but we still talk about the same issues 60, 70 years from now.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Mr. Mann, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, I want us to continue the conversation. I want to get your take on what we're seeing happening nationally and how it affecting the citizens of Maywood. I'm speaking of the affirmative actions piece. We know that the big decision coming down from student loan debt, and we're going to take a couple of questions from our online culture crew for you, Mr. Mayor. So I appreciate you being here with us. Folks, we got to take a quick pause. Let's continue the conversation on the other side. Join me in the conversation as we talk to the mayor of Maywood, Illinois, Mayor Nathaniel Booker, to get your take, to get your questions answered, to share your thoughts with the mayor. If you're living in Chicago, if you live near Maywood, if you are a resident of Maywood, we would love to hear from you right here on The Culture. So stay with us. We got a lot more to talk about with the mayor here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Your money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking to the mayor of Maywood, Illinois, Mayor Nathaniel Booker, talking about the work that he's doing in the community there, as well as how things are happening nationally, affecting his role and his effectiveness in the community. Mr. Mayor, again, we thank you so much for your time with us this afternoon. Mr. Mayor, talk to us a little bit about what's going on the impact of the national conversation around affirmative action. That came up yesterday as a result of that major Supreme Court decision. Does that impact your community in a big way? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so when we think about striking down affirmative action, it impacts every community in every way, right? So a lot of times I tell people when we talk about DEI, we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? But I look at it sometimes a little differently, where I look at it as division, exclusion, and invasion. So as you are sitting there saying affirmative action isn't a thing, it's almost like you're saying slavery wasn't a thing. It's almost like oppression of Black people wasn't a thing. So you guys just need to get over it. When you think of seats at the table, when you look at different boards, when you look at on a national, on a statewide level, those that approve funding sources, those that approve grants to go into communities, when you look at executive board level rooms and you look at that 1 or 2 Black people that have made it to the executive suite, that you got the other 15 or 20 still looking the same. I mean, we're not going to act like those things did not happen because of affirmative action, because you weren't doing it willingly. And even with affirmative action being in place, you're still just bare minimum doing it. So I think when you strike things like that down, it affects everything down to the micro scale level. When you think about student loan debts, how can you not look at that as affecting everything? The crazy part for me is the federal government can create so many programs that can allow you to be dependent on them for 15, 20, or 30 years, as long as you choose not to strive for excellence or excel in life.
Right.
But simply because you tried for 4 years, 4 years can put you into 30 years of debt. But if I choose to have different things that make me need government assistance, the only way I can stay on assistance for that next 20 to 30 years, I'm not going to go into debt, but I'm surely not going to move the needle on involving my life, nor for my family. And I think as a government entity and as government overall, we need to truly look at programs that we have that don't require anybody to do any better, but survive. Because that's dependency, that you're making people dependent on you. That's generational dependency that does not build generational wealth. And that is an unsustainable thing to continue to do.
Right.
So when we look at things like striking down student loan debt, first off, let's look at these institutions. Your student to advance in the United States educationally should not cost as much in the first place.
Hell no.
Let's be clear on let's be clear on that.
Right.
If racism wasn't still a thing today, why are you guys even challenging affirmative action? Because you're still racist. So I just think when we talk about different things and when we look at things that are happening, it becomes that moment. Are we going to continue to allow people within government, within corporate America, within local government to choose to divide, not celebrate diversity? Are we going to continue to include or be so inclusive that we exclude ourselves out of situations and out of the table of conversation or importance? And then are we going to allow things to continue to invade our lives that are not beneficial to us? And I think that's how you can look at DEI two different ways.
No, and I'm right there with you. One of our crew members, Janelle Fields. Janelle, it's good to hear from you. You said it amazes me how this country has no problem subsidizing private entities in housing, transportation, farming, retail, mining, and pharmaceutical industries, but hates on anything that helps individuals.
Well, let's be clear, Janelle. Everything you just named does help an individual. It just doesn't help the individuals that look like you. So every program that they come up with does benefit an individual in some aspect. The problem that I think that we run into as Black people is we don't know how to work together. And even when we do get access to certain rooms, we're quicker to get a hold of people who don't look like us to work more with them versus we are to pull each other up to be able to work together and build upon what we already are working on. So I think that what amazes me is how government consistently creates dependency-based programming versus upward hand up versus hand out programming. And we still act like that's somehow going to create some generational wealth or build up the Black community that has been given nothing but dependency programming decade after decade.
Now, Mr. Mann, that leads me to the next question from our crew member, Real Brooklyn. He checked in and said he wonders what your take is on an unchecked bureaucracy that has become bloated and inefficient at the expense of the classrooms. And I want to even add, like, not just at the expense of the classroom, but in other spaces. When you have an unchecked bureaucracy, when you want to keep this dependent relationship going, I mean, how do we find a balance with that, considering we are in a different place? Black people in this country, Mr. Mann, I'm sure some of your citizens have expressed, like, look, I don't want to have to keep looking to the government for every single thing in my life. So how do we deal with that?
So a couple of things that we're doing in Maywood, because I can just go off of examples of what we're doing. We're focusing heavily on workforce development, right? So there is the opportunity of Clean Energy Jobs Act funding. That's billions of dollars that's about to roll out. So we're making sure that we actually have partnership with two agencies. One already is closing on a building to build workforce development housing. One of the buildings that the village owns, we're converting to a workforce development center. And then there's another partner from an energy standpoint that's looking at another 50,000 square foot facility. So when you think about that type of stuff, it's understanding the federal government has all of this once in a lifetime money that's coming down to focus on taking us to the next generation. But how many Black communities are actually tapping into it versus just saying, I don't know what you're talking about, but give me some money. So I think it's more so of us being proactive and being prepared for when this money rolls out. And I think that's what we're doing in the village of Maywood. But to answer the bigger question, it has to do with, I'm going to take it back to community. If we already know this education system was never designed for us, if we already know that this government system was never designed for us, has it evolved? Yes. But was it ever designed for Black people? No.
So with that, Mr. Mayor, should we keep putting our eggs in that basket? Should we say, all right, we need to create a new cadre of Black political leadership? Should we say, if we just encourage people to go out and vote for better policies and better representatives? I mean, should we keep putting that eggs in that basket?
So I think that for me to answer that question, I would actually have to believe that we are putting our eggs in any basket. I don't think Black people are putting eggs in no baskets. Because when I think of it from the standpoint of, let's give you Maywood as an example. So Maywood, we have over 25,000 residents, about 15,000 are registered to vote. Now for the president of the United States, you'll get about 12,000 people to come out and vote. For the governor of the state of Illinois, you'll get about 9,000 people come out to vote. For the mayor of Maywood, you get less than 2,500 to come out and vote. Where did those 10,000 people go? So my thing is, when you're really focused on local issues, such as who decides what the school board teaches and what the teachers are teaching in the school, that's local level. But 10,000 of y'all disappeared to vote for that. That's not happening on a federal level. When you think about the parks, so right now, the village of Maywood, we're restoring 7 parks that all 7 of them are 20 to 30 years old. Can't even insure them anymore. But did anybody go vote for the park district commissioner? No, we didn't do that. So my thing is, like, when you vote on mayor, park district, school board, elementary, high school, middle school, when you choose not to vote on these local things and you think somehow the federal government is going to handle it, I think that's when I say our eggs are in no basket, because we're depending on somebody on a federal level to handle what literally there are people there to handle every day in local government that we're not handling. When you think of, like I said, over 19,000 communities in the nation, less than 17,000 or less have less than 50,000 residents. So it's not like we're looking at these major cities. I think sometimes when we look at narrative and when we look at conversation, we look at all these major cities, right? But if 90% of the nation is not these major cities, that's where we're coming up short at. You look at Illinois, 1,300 communities. But what do we talk about? Chicago. We don't talk about the 200 plus communities in the surrounding Chicagoland population that is affected by things that happen in Chicago. We don't talk about the 200 other mayors that are in the Chicagoland area, or the school districts or the park districts that all feed into a thriving community, or the police departments or the fire departments. And I think when we don't have our eggs in that basket, that's when we choose to lose.
Okay. Hey, Mr. Mayor, you putting it down. I'm picking up what you putting down, brother. I get it. You can't take, you can't, what's the word I'm looking for? You can't pick and choose. You can't complain about one thing, but then not be present for something else, right? You got to be present on all fronts if you're talking about making the change. And I remember having a conversation earlier this week with another guest when she mentioned freedom comes in steps. But some of us don't make that step. Like we have this expectation like, oh, we're going to jump from A to E, and not understanding that if you don't put in the work to get to B, C, D, then E is not going to ever come about. That circumstances is never going to happen. And I love how you put that it's local. I mean, as a community organizer, I've been always told all politics is local. Everything happens on a local level. Even national movements starts locally. Even major Supreme Court decisions start with one case. One case. So I think that your point is very well taken. Mr. Mayor, we got about 30 seconds or so. What's the best way? What would you like to say for the people that are watching this today that are interested? Because a lot of people are feeling you. Folks are checking in and saying, look, the mayor's talking nothing but the truth. Will Witt, appreciate you for making that comment. Janelle Fields, you said amen. Absolutely. Tiana, you said the turnout for the local elections is crazy. It was only a third that voted for the mayor in Chicago. Absolutely. So what do you want people to walk away with this conversation knowing about the great city of Maywood?
I'm going to say what it is about Maywood, what it is about any community, especially if it's an underserved community. Get involved. A lot of people try to create these superheroes as if we're the Justice League just because we're the ones that sit up to get elected. Being elected versus doing the work, like, we need help. So I'm doing an SOS to everybody, not just for Maywood. If you genuinely care about your community, get involved. And that doesn't mean you have to run for office, but like, we need help. There are no magical budgets that create resources. So I think for me, the biggest thing that I can leave anybody with is, if you're not involved in local government, please become involved in local government. If you want change in your community, don't just pull into your driveway and go into your house and pray for better. Faith without works is dead. I walk in faith every day, but I really need help. And so does every other mayor who's in an underserved community. So don't talk about it, just be about it. Actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, it is. You probably got some new people coming to your city now, Mr. Matt. The way you talking, brother.
We got houses for sale.
I really appreciate your time, Mayor Nathaniel Booker, checking in from Maywood, Illinois. Mr. Mayor, you're always welcome to join us back here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network, and keep up the great work. And I know public service and constituent services is not easy, so I'm very serious when I say thank you, and you know, we appreciate you being in that space, because, as you said, we all need a little help right now, and having brothers like yourself on the front line makes a huge difference. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely, Kenan. I appreciate it. And anytime you want me on the show, I'm more than welcome to do it.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Mayor Nathaniel Booker from the great city. All right, appreciate you. Mr. Mayor Nathaniel Booker from the great city of Maywood, Illinois. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. In the next hour, let's talk to, we're going to have just a small conversation with Mr. Patrick Cupid, who is a fashion designer who's doing some great work in the space of making sure that we are showing our worth, and more importantly, we are showing our culture in those spaces. But then the big culture conversation comes around with the Supreme Court of the United States striking down the student loan debt plan. We'll be checking in with Zach Geist and Corinna Denise to get that discussion along with you. So stay with us. A lot to get to in the next hour of The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I truly appreciate you for tuning in. I'm your host, Raji Muhammad. Happy Friday. A lot is happening right now as we are keeping you up to date on some of these things. And I would highly encourage folks that as we have these conversations about the Supreme Court, as we have this conversation about Essence Fest and some of the other things that are going on across the country, make sure you keep your eyes glued to Black Star Network. We actually are streaming a number of things right now. And big brother Roland is out and about in the country. He is down in New Orleans for Essence Fest. So as I spoke about the beginning, the Vice President and U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen being at Essence Fest, I'm sure we're going to get some more footage and get some more details about what was said down at Essence Fest as Brother Roland is down there. But make sure y'all stay tuned to Black Star Network. Of course, Roland Martin Unfiltered coming up at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on BlackStarNetwork.com, on Amazon News, and you can keep live as we'll also be streaming live here on YouTube as well. So we're covering all of our bases here on Black Star Network. I want to have the conversation now with a brother who is doing some awesome work in the area of fashion and industry. I'm happy to have him joining us, Mr. Patrick Cupid, who was raised and based in New York City, as he's doing the work of making sure that our culture is seen all over the world. And I'm happy to have him joining us for a few minutes to talk about his latest line that combines luxury and leisure and allows for a seamless transition between both the professional and social events. So Patrick, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. How are you, brother?
I'm good. How are you? It's been a little bit.
I'm good.
How's it going?
I'm good. You know, we got a lot to cover in this crazy news day, but I wanted to make sure that we at least get a chance to chat with you, as we know that you're doing some stuff in the other spaces of arts, entertainment, and fashion. Talk to us a little bit about the latest project you got going, Patrick.
So I just finished the coming fall-winter collection for 2023-2024, entitled Letting Go. And I'm excited about that and, to see what happens with it or how people make it their own come the winter and into the ensuing year. Currently, I'm working on the next spring-summer collection for 2024, which will go to market and launch this coming September.
So when has made, and congratulations on even, getting out this collection and everything. What is it about this collection that is the big thing that you want us to know? What makes it stand out from other collections from other Black designers like yourself?
I think even delving a bit into the inspiration with Letting Go, it is how it sounds and it isn't. It's really sort of about shedding the ideas of that other people or society, culture, time, religion put upon us, that tell us what we can't be, the limitations, or even, tell us who we are, right? Like the outside forces that deign to say, you are this, or this is where you belong, or this is your category or your box, or this is what you should be about, as opposed to you're hearing and listening to yourself. Who am I really? Like, what's going on inside of me that I have to offer? What is it that I want to give? It's not necessarily about have to, but it's about wanting to tap into, your own voice, your true sense of self. And so letting go is really is sort of saying, you know what, no more of the outside, no more of this external influence affecting the person that I am, or the person that I can be. Because although sometimes, we see things as, oh, well, this is reinforcement or this is support or these are good things, they still put limitations. And I think when we begin to listen to ourselves and when we hear our own truths, we find that we are unlimited. We can choose to go left, right, up or down, wherever we want to. And it's sort of this sense of floating, where every direction and any direction is open to us.
And that's the place, and I think that this opens up the discussion about self-expression, because we're in a culture and in a time, Patrick, and you know it like I know it, brother, where our self-expression is under attack, right? Our self-expression is constantly being scrutinized and criticized. What do you say to folks that say, you know what, Patrick, you have to help us to get into a place where we can feel comfortable in our own skin?
I think it starts with, and I'm going to contradict a little bit, it's not even getting to a place, is just being comfortable in your own skin in any place. And I think that's where the problem starts. I think we've been so pushed around and shoved into corners or up against walls or into lines or out of lines or away from the table or under the table, that we've adapted this. Okay, well, we have to be comfortable in our own space, in our own little corner, in our own little world. But there is no such thing as my own little world or my own little corner. I share this planet, this earth, this environment with many, many different people. And it takes all of us in order to move things forward, in order to move culture, innovation, technology, ideas, society forward. We just listened to the mayor talking about people voting even on the local level within their communities. And they look at it as, okay, well, I can vote for the president, I can vote for the mayor, but they're not voting for police commissioner, and then wondering why we're still targeted, or there's a lot of discrepancy in the way people are being policed and what's happening there. So it really isn't about being comfortable in one particular space or within it's being comfortable with who you are anywhere that you are and anywhere that you go. There shouldn't be this feeling of, well, I walk into a certain neighborhood and I feel unsafe. Right. I feel out of place. I feel like I don't belong. And you know what? That is cool. You don't have to belong. Belonging sucks. Belonging is whack. It's okay to stand
Wait a
out.
minute, hold on, Patrick. I want nobody to jump over that. You say you don't have to feel like you need to belong. Belonging is sucks. Belonging is whack.
Right.
Wow. So you push back on the whole belonging thing.
Well, because it's someone I read recently is that, the opposite of like independence or being is not sort of like not fitting in or so to speak. I'm not quite sure of the words exactly. But it's about sort of trying to fit in, right? Where you're trying to squeeze yourself into this space that you don't belong in. So you're converting, you're changing yourself, you're manipulating yourself, you're altering your mentality, your thoughts, your weight, your size, your skin tone, your hair texture, whatever it is, in order to be accepted in certain areas, in certain spaces, right? In certain categories, so to speak. But why? If you're that thing or that person or that someone that is different, that is fresh, that is brand new, then give us something new. Give me something new. Express something new. Have something new to say. Bring a new topic of conversation to the table, and let's discuss that. Maybe we're not seeing the things that we need to see, and because you are on the outside, you see them. So let's talk about that. Let's change things up instead of trying to always fit into the same old things all the time. We worry about how things don't move forward or how things don't change. Like we talk about our voices being shut down and our expressing our sense of self being challenged. This is not new. This is always, right? They change the history, they change the dynamics and the dialogue around things. We've always been challenged. And it hasn't changed. The thing is, at some points and in some instances, we try to fit in, right? Because we want to be accepted. We want to be seen as the same, as no different, but we're not, and that is okay. It has to be okay to be different. It has to be okay to be individual. It has to be okay for you to be yourself, 100% true to who you are, and that be respected.
That is being respected. Patrick, your fall winter collection is called, the theme is letting go. And I love that because it gives us a chance to reflect upon what are we letting go? Are we letting go the world's expectations of who we are and who we should be and how we should present ourselves? What are we letting go? What would you say is the big thing as we wrap up this part of the discussion? What do you say is the big thing that we need to let go of?
I would say, again, that idea of representation and how we present ourselves. I always say fashion is a language, and the clothing, without words speaks for us. They tell people things about us, about who we are. and they tell us things about ourselves and who we are. It could be you looking in the mirror and going, oh my gosh, wow, like this color on me, or I look amazing, or I like the way this fits, or about how you feel, in the moment. And so that is something I think is rather important. And I think we need to be more mindful of the messages that we, put out. And it's not about not being disruptive, but it's also because people are watching, children are watching, and what do we say to them, just by the visual presentation.
Absolutely. Patrick Cupid is a high-end, fashion designer. He is an entrepreneur. He is one of the voices that you need to know, folks. If you aren't familiar with his work, make sure you go to his website at patrickcupid.com, Patrick Cupid, CUPID.com, to check out his latest fall-winter 2023 collection with the title of Letting Go. There it is, folks. His website there. He's putting out some phenomenal pieces, and more importantly, he's the heart of the culture and encouraging us to be our authentic selves. So, Patrick, I truly appreciate you taking a few moments, brother, talking to us about your collection. You're always welcome back on the show, but good luck on making this thing a real success, brother.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, big culture convo talking about the Supreme Court and them striking down the student loan debt plan. We're going to be checking in with our online culture crew member, Corinna Denise, and Mr. Zach Geis, who's been working in the student loan space for over a decade, to get their take on this situation. Plus, we want to hear from you, so get ready to join us and post your thoughts on our YouTube page under Roland Martin, and let's have the conversation about the future of student loan debt in America. Stay with us. That discussion is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Raji Muhammad. All right, for our big culture convo today, of course, is around the Supreme Court deciding to strike down President Biden's attempt to relieve millions of student loan debt borrowers of the debt and the burden of the debt. They have decided to strike this down and say that essentially that it's unconstitutional. Let me just share with you a little bit of what the big part of this conversation is all about. President Biden actually just finished his remarks around this situation. And in a moment, I want to play for you what the president has said. But as we look at this situation, here's what has been the big concern. That there was a 6-3 decision with conservative justices in the majority saying that the Biden administration overstepped its authorities with the plan, and it leaves borrowers on the hook for this idea, this whole thing with them striking down the student loan debt plan. It leaves borrowers on the hook for repayments that are expected to resume in the fall. So there's a lot of concern and a lot of criticism about this situation. Let me first start this conversation off with the president's words himself. He just spoke just a few moments ago about this latest decision. Here's what the president had to say.
Hello, folks. There you go, Mr. Secretary. Let me begin by saying I know there are millions of Americans in this country who feel disappointed and discouraged or even a little bit angry about the court's decision today on student debt. And I must admit I do too. Before I tell you the steps we're going to take, I want to talk about what we've been able to achieve so far on student loan over the past few years. First, we made the largest increase in Pell Grants in over a decade, helping students from families who nearly all make less than $60,000 a year. Then we fixed the so-called, with the help of the department, public service loan forgiveness program. So the borrowers who got into public service, such as school teachers, police officers, social workers, service members, they actually got the debt relief they were entitled to under the law. Before I came to office, only 7,000 people have benefited from that program. Today, over 600,000 borrowers have received relief from that program. And it's still available. So many more people can be helped. And I encourage you to apply if you haven't already. You're still eligible. Go to studentaid.gov. It matters. Third, my administration improved the program from the Obama-Biden administration on income-driven repayment plan. That's what it was referred to as. Back then, we set a limit. Student borrowers would pay no more than 10% of their disposable income to pay back their debt in any one time. My administration is going to reduce that to 5%. It's now the most generous repayment program ever. No one with an undergraduate loan today or in the future, whether from a community college or a four-year college, will have to pay more than 5% of their disposable income to repay their loan. And that's income after you pay for the necessities like housing and food and the like. Typical borrower is going to save about $1,000 a year. And if you keep up payments for 20 years without missing them, your total debt is forgiven after 20 years. That's what the program was before, but we've just reduced it to 5%. In addition to that, last year I announced my student debt relief plan, the plan that was on the verge of providing more than 40 million Americans with real debt relief, up to $10,000 for many borrowers and up to $20,000 for those who had gotten a Pell Grant. Nearly 90% of the relief would have gone to borrowers, 90% of it, making less than $75,000 a year. And no one making over $125,000 would qualify. This program was all set to begin. The website had been set up. The applications had been simplified so that it took less than 5 minutes to complete. Notice had been sent out to people about the relief they were eligible for. 16 million people had already been approved. The money was literally about to go out the door. And then Republican elected officials and special interests stepped in. They said, no, no. Literally snatching from the hands of millions of Americans thousands of dollars in student debt relief that was about to change their lives. You know, these Republican officials just couldn't bear the thought of providing relief for working class, middle class Americans. Republican state officials sued my administration, attempting to block relief, including millions of their own constituents. Republicans in Congress voted to overturn the plan. I think every one. I don't think I had any Republican votes for this plan. At the same time, think about this. We all supported the Paycheck Protection Program. Remember PPP? You know, which was designed to help business owners who lost money because of the pandemic. It was a worthy program. But let's be clear. Some of the same elected Republicans, members of Congress who strongly opposed giving relief to students, got hundreds of thousands of dollars themselves in relief, members of Congress, because of the businesses they were able to keep open. Several members of Congress got over $1 million. All those loans were forgiven. You know how much that program cost? $760 billion. My program's too expensive. $360 billion more than I proposed in my student debt relief program. I was trying to provide students with $10,000 to $20,000 in relief. By comparison, the average amount forgiven in the PPP, the pandemic loan program, average amount forgiven was $70,000. Now a kid making $60,000, trying to pay back his bills, asking for $10,000 in relief. Come on, the hypocrisy is stunning. You can't help a family making 75 grand a year, but you can help a millionaire and you have your debt forgiven. My plan would not only have been life-changing for millions of Americans, it would have been good for the American economy, freeing millions of Americans from the crushing burden of student debt. More homes would have been bought, more businesses would have been started, more couples would have had the confidence to start a family. Millions of people would have felt they could get on with their lives. These Republicans blocked all that. Now, in addition to the hypocrisy, some of these Republicans in Congress are shamelessly pushing to advance a bill in the coming weeks that gives hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks and handouts to the wealthiest Americans. They still haven't given up on making permanent a $2 trillion tax cut that they never paid for. Never paid for. $2 trillion. So let me be clear. Republicans in Congress, it's not about reducing the deficit. It's not about fairness in forgiving loans. It's only about forgiving loans they have to pay. Today, the Supreme Court sided with them. I believe the court's decision to strike down my student debt relief program was a mistake, was wrong. I'm not going to stop fighting to deliver borrowers what they need, particularly those at the bottom end of the economic scale. So we need to find a new way, and we're moving as fast as we can. First, I'm announcing today a new path consistent with today's ruling to provide student debt relief to as many borrowers as possible, as quickly as possible. We will ground this new approach in a different law than my original plan, the so-called Higher Education Act. That will allow Secretary Cardona, who's with me today, to compromise, waive, or release loans under certain circumstances. This new path is legally sound. It's going to take longer, but in my view, it's the best path that remains to providing for as many borrowers as possible with debt relief. I've directed my team to move as quickly as possible under the law. Just moments ago, Secretary Cardona took the first step to initiate that new approach. We're not going to waste any time on this. We're getting moving on it. It's going to take longer, but we're getting at it right away. Second, we know what many borrowers will need to make their hard choices, which their budgets are being strained now when they start to repay their monthly loan payments this fall. You know, we know that figuring out how to pay these added expenses can take time for borrowers, and they might miss payments at the front end as they get back into repayment. Normally, this could lead borrowers to fall into delinquency and default. But without their it will hurt their financial security, and that's not good for them or the economy. That's why we're creating a temporary 12-month, what we're calling on-ramp repayment program. Now, this is not the same as a student loan pause. It's been in effect for the past 3 years. Monthly payments will be due, Bills will not go out and interest will be accruing. And during this period, if you can pay your monthly bills, you should. But if you cannot, if you miss payments, this on-ramp will temporarily remove the threat of default or having your credit harmed, which can hurt borrowers for years to come. Because the Department of Education won't refer borrowers. And the reason why that will work, they won't refer borrowers who miss payments to credit agencies for 12 months to give them a chance to get back up and running. Let me close with this. Our Republican officials say student loan relief is a giveaway to the privileged. You hear that loud now, the privileged. Concern for the privileged. But I know who student loan borrowers are in this country. So do all you. With a couple putting off having a child until they can find their way to deal with their debt. That's who they are. They're young putting off buying their first home so they can get out from under student loans. Hope on the horizon, thanks to relief that I planned last year. Today's court decision snatches it away from them. I get it. I get it. I hear this. And I'm concerned about it. But today's decision has closed one path. Now we're going to pursue another. I'm never going to stop fighting for you. We'll use every tool at our disposal to get you the student debt relief you need and reach your dreams. It's good for the economy. It's good for the country. It's going to be good for you. Thank you very, very much for listening. We're going to get this done, God willing. Thank you.
Mr. President, why did you give millions of borrowers false hope? You've doubted your own authority here in the past.
I didn't give any false hope. The question was whether or not I would do even more than was requested. What I did, I thought was appropriate and was able to be done and would get done. I didn't give borrowers false hope, but the Republicans snatched away the hope that they were given, and it's real hope. Thank you.
Mr. President, will you cancel
your authority? Did you overstep your authority?
I think the court misinterpreted the Constitution.
Mr. President, do you admit failure in Afghanistan?
Wow.
Mistake. There was a report on Afghanistan withdrawal saying there was failure, mistakes. Do you admit there was mistakes during the withdrawal and before?
No, all the evidence is coming back there. Remember what I said about Afghanistan? I said Al-Qaeda would not be there. I said it wouldn't be there. I said we'd get help from the Taliban. What's happening now? What's going on? Read your press. I was right. Thanks.
So the report is from the...
Okay. There it is. President Biden just released, just shared some brief remarks around the latest decision coming out of the Supreme Court. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to be checking in with college admission advisor Corinna Denise, online culture crew member, and Zach Geis, who serves as the founder of Student Loan Tutor, which is a financial advisory company that's been working in the student loan space since 2015. And Zach has over a decade worth of experience in that space. So we'll have that conversation along with you. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Welcome to The Culture. We are now getting ready for our big culture convo around the student loan debt relief plan that has been struck down by the Supreme Court. Joining me now are two dynamic voices. We have Corinna Denise, who serves as an advisor, college admissions advisor, an educator, online culture crew member. Corinna, good to hear from you and see you. Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. And also we have Mr. Zach Geist, who is the founder of Student Loan Tutor, which is a financial advisory company that have been helping student loan borrowers since 2015. They have saved $300 million for thousands of borrowers with student loan debt. Zach has been in this space for over a decade. So Zach, I appreciate you for joining us this afternoon as well. Zach, I'm gonna start the conversation off with you. Then Corinna, I'm gonna come to you. But Zach, hearing what the president had to say about this issue, there are a number of things that struck me. One is that he did not hold back on making this a partisan issue, for one. But two, when he broke down the numbers of how this thing would play out, what was your take on that? Is the president, is the numbers that he brought to the table, this actually the numbers just for fact-checking purposes?
Yeah, the fact-checking purposes. When it comes to student loans, it's very difficult to fact-check. It's very difficult to understand what is a defaulted borrower, what isn't. I do know that there was a time where people had originally applied for student loan forgiveness through IDR, where there was 36 people who qualified, and this was announced during the COVID pandemic. So I'm always cautious with the exact numbers, and I could get you those answers, or at least what's published. But right. I want to almost redirect this because more important than what he said was what he didn't say. And I don't understand why he's not saying this thing, but it seems like a shell game, you know, when you put down shells or cups and you put an object in a cup and you spin it around and the person's looking to try to figure out where the object is. And the object in this case is that student loan forgiveness or whatever that benefit is. And everybody's looking while somebody comes behind. And the real game is the person pickpocketing you from behind. And the question I have is, why didn't he mention something that's actually happening, which is the one-time IDR account adjustment? I have many of my clients, we have thousands of active clients, and I've had many of clients, probably 15%, have their loans totally forgiven with that one-time IDR account adjustment. So it's taking back and it's looking at all the payments, all the forbearance terms that are over 36 months, any payment made in any repayment plan, even if it wasn't a direct loan. And as long as the borrower takes and before December 31st consolidates all of their other loan types into a direct consolidated loan, all of those period of time will count as qualified payments towards IDR loan forgiveness. And there was no mention of that during that speech. It's almost no mention of it in the media. I have no idea why it's not being mentioned. I think it's more attractive for a lot of borrowers. Again, it's not as blanketed, so it's not as politically exciting where it affects everybody. But the fact that it's just not mentioned at all when he mentions so many other abstract pieces is where I'm confused. That's where I don't even remember the numbers he was saying, because I was waiting for him to say something about this. And yet again, I'm confused. I don't know why it's not being said, aside from some type of complicated shell game.
And Zach, to that point, do you feel like this is probably why that we're having the conversation about student loan debt the way we are having this conversation? Is because the conversation has been set up to be like an all eggs in one basket. Whereas, for example, the work that you're doing with your company, you're like, look, I mean, it's all well and good to have student loan debt. That sounds like a great thing, but you actually, speaking to the borrower, you actually can manage and get a handle on this on your own.
I'm about as afraid of student loan debt as I am of getting scurvy, knowing that vitamin C cures scurvy. The challenge is that the information that me and my team understand and know, there's a saying that I've come up with over the years, and it says, if you're forced, it used to be if you're going to play the game, but it's not, you don't going to play any game. If you don't grow up wealthy, you're going to play the game. You're forced to play the student loan game if you want to get an education, which currently means if you want to get an education to earn a decent livelihood, you're essentially groomed through all of school that you have to go to college. And if you're going to do that and you don't have wealthy parents and you don't get a scholarship, then you're going to have to pay for that school. And in order to do that, you're going to have to take out student loans, and those student loans are going to be taken out with interest. And there's there's nobody who apparently has your interest in mind, or very few. You may get lucky because somebody just cares about you, but there's nobody where their financial interest is to help you navigate the student loan repayment, the whole repayment system. But essentially, there are ways to pay virtually nothing back on your student loans. I'd say most of our thousands of clients who are doctors, nurses, lawyers have a $0 payment or close to a $0 payment at most of the time. And if they don't, it's because they're earning such high income that there's nothing me and my team can do to drive their payment down. So it's a matter of how to navigate the student loan repayment matrix or game or scam, whatever you want to call it. And it's the same with taxes. It's the same with finance. There's all of these words that are complicated that you don't really know. There's people directing your attention at one thing when if you just focus your attention on in a different direction, you'd actually you'd learn something. And I think what I really, if there's anything anybody hears me on today, is don't feel defeated and like hopeless and throw in the towel. Don't take this year to not make payments. Although maybe don't make payments, that may be the smartest thing to do, but take this year to learn how to navigate these systems, whether that's with someone like my organization's help, or whether that's with some other organizations, or just you doing your own research. There's ways to navigate income-driven repayment with direct loans through through the federal IDR income-driven repayment plans. I'll give you an example if it's okay. Can I give an example?
Sure. And Zach, just let people know, because some folks are just coming in, to remind us, what does IDR mean?
IDR, sorry. There you go with that jargon. You say enough of this stuff and people just tune out. Yeah, so I talk about it so often. Thank you for calling me on that. IDR stands for income-driven repayment, not to be confused with IBR, income-based repayment, which is technically one of 6, now technically one of 7, depending on how you slice or dice it. Income-sensitive repayment, income pay-as-you-earn. Essentially, they're all different acronyms that stand for different ways to use your income and family size and tax filing status to base your payment on your income as opposed to the loan amount and interest rate, which is the exciting piece. This is super important people get. This shit has never happened before. There is a way now, if you can qualify for a $0 payment, which will be a greater number, because the payments used to be based on 150% of the poverty line index. What Biden is declaring essentially is that it's going to be based on 225% of the poverty line index. I don't know if he actually said that, but he said it's going to be 5% of discretionary income. Now, what that means, and then there's an interest subsidy currently within the repayment plan called Revised Pay As You Earn, which every borrower who has direct loans, which could be everybody right now. And usually I had to say, well, do you really want to consolidate these loans into direct loans, which is free to do with your servicer, by the way? Like, I would have to calculate how many months do they have towards forgiveness with that plan? And then if they go here, what do they lose? And what do they benefit from what? It was a really complex calculation. But until December 31st, every borrower can and should, I've never been able to say a blanketed statement like this, should consolidate all of their loans that are not direct loans into direct loans so they could qualify for that. So that's that shell game. If you're focused on this and you miss that, you're going to miss all of those past payments. So I went in a little tangent. Revised Pay As You Earn, they're talking about making an adjustment to it, which will now make it 5% of discretionary income instead of 10, and then 220% of the poverty line index for your family size. And family size is calculated differently with the Department of Education than it is with the IRS, which is great for people like me and my friends who grew up, I grew up in Hayward in Oakland, California, in not like the rich upper class area, where you have people that maybe you aren't filing, they're living in your household, but maybe they're not on your taxes. They're not tax dependent, but they are dependent on you, and you could count them as part of your family size. So that's your friend who's going through a situation that's got his 2 kids there that you're helping support 50% or more of the time, like in your household. That increases your family size. And this is not information that people understand. So if somebody has a $0 payment, which is possible, you could have an actual on-time payment of $0. And if you're in this new revised Pay As You Earn, you're going to accrue interest. And people say, you don't want to accrue interest. I don't give a crap about accruing interest. If you accrue interest, it doesn't matter unless that interest then accumulates and capitalizes as part of your principal balance. Now, what happens is whatever interest accrues with this new plan, 100% of it's forgiven, which means if you qualify for a $0 payment because you know how to navigate the system, you have direct loans, and you're in a revised Pay As You Earn, you will actually have a $0 payment and a 0% interest rate. And then at the end of the loan term, depending on whether you work for the government, if they're undergrad loans or they're grad loans, that loan is forgiven. It'd be taxes, like you have to pay taxes on that amount or not. That's to be established. But Biden has set precedents that there's not going to be a tax implication potentially, because during his first term, he's waived that.
Corinne, I want to get your take on this as I'm listening to Zach, and we got about a minute before we take our next pause. What's your take?
Yeah, so Zach, I was really intently listening because I've kind of been on the other side for many years, right? As a college counselor, admissions advisor, guiding high school students, and pretty much trying not to get them mixed up with the loans, right? So trying to find those colleges that were able to meet 100% financial need, scholarships, at least trying to reduce maybe how much they may need to borrow. So I really want to ask you, how do students get in touch with someone like you? Like, how would they know about this information on the flip side after they're done, right? And they've already obtained their degrees to figure out how to consolidate their loans.
And Zach, let me do this. Let me take a quick pause because I know people ask.
I talk a lot.
Zach, I know you talk a lot, man. I know you got it. I know you got a lot of information, but I think that your opening statement that this is a shell game, this is resonating with a lot of people. I'm telling you, it resonates.
I'm going to say some crazy stuff. I'm just warning you. It is not mainstream stuff, but if you look it up, it's going to make a lot of sense.
Wow. Hey, look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, more with Zach, Geis, Corinna, Denise, and you. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland. Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Faraji Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We have been talking about the Supreme Court major decision about striking down President Biden's student loan debt plan and the implications of it. I've been talking to Mr. Zach Geis who has been working in the student loan space for over 10 years. He serves as the founder of Student Loan Tutor that he founded in 2015, which is a financial advisory company which is helping student loan borrowers to deal with their student loan debt in a very, very effective way. And also joined by a Culture Crew member, college admissions advisor, Corinna Denise, as we're having this conversation. Zach, I want to go to you because Corinna brought it up. So many people are like, all right, this guy is saying something. He's saying something a little different. He's not talking about just the same old stuff. So let's put out your information, Zach. How can people get some information about the student loan tutor?
Yeah, I mean, just go to studentloantutor.com. That's the easiest way, studentloantutor.com. You can find us on Facebook. Yeah. You can find us on the Better Business Bureau, all that stuff. And we're essentially, our fees are paid by money we save directly from not having to pay the federal government. So we'll make that make sense to you. And then we also guarantee that we do what we say we're going to do, just like we said we're going to do it, or we don't charge anything. So essentially you're paying with the bank's money, so to speak. So I feel really good going to sleep at night that way.
Oh, yeah. That would definitely make us sleep well at night. But here's the thing about this, though, Zach. I'm wondering if to take the partisanship out of this whole situation, because I feel like that is going to get into the way of things, right?
It is.
The Supreme Court saying that President Biden and the Education Secretary kind of overstepped their bounds in a sense, right, of this process. So now that we see that you got two elephants rumbling together, and that we're the grass here, that's the ones that's going to feel the impact. What should be our response in this? Is it like coming up with an alternative plan to deal with our student loan debt? Is it some political move that we should take? What should be our response to this latest decision?
I mean, I think both. I think still ask for more loan forgiveness. Why not? There's a term, there's something throughout economics in history that's been required. It's been happening since ancient Egyptian time, actually written on the actual Rosetta Stone itself, which is where Egyptian hieroglyphs, where the language was understood to mean. There was it was written in 3 languages, and what was written in 3 languages, which you never hear, right? Like there was a Rosetta Stone, and somehow we understood what Egyptian hieroglyphs meant. What the hell was on that damn stone? What was on that stone was a debt jubilee declaration written in 3 languages. And so, yeah, I guess, for a long time I was talking about student loan forgiveness, and people, even though it was written into law, people just didn't believe that something like student loan forgiveness existed. And for economics to function, you have to occasionally have a debt jubilee. There's a debtor and there's a creditor class. And if the debtor class is drowning too much in debt, like they just can't function. And neither can the creditor class. They're like essentially, it's like a parasite and host, but in reverse. You know what I mean? It's like very few people consuming off the masses. And I'm probably speaking to an audience that understands that's exactly what's happening. So I say, yeah, do the activism thing, get out there and picket and all that. At the same time, realize that there's ways to navigate this system, because it's a labyrinth, right? There's reasons that these income-driven repayment plans exist, and there's ways to navigate it if you know how to do it. I mean, they make it complex, or it's complex naturally. I don't know exactly which came first, but I'll give you an example. We have someone, her name's Dr. Michaela Edwards. She's a chiropractor. She's the president of the Black Chiropractic Association. She's brought us there to speak. I think it was actually in Hayward where I grew up. And so she contacted us. She was paying thousands of dollars a month. And then within the IDR framework, we dropped her payment to 0. She never paid another dollar again for years. And then with this one-time IDR account adjustment, and because she's worked for a nonprofit, which is that organization, she actually only has to make 120 qualified payments, which her forbearance time and past payments and all the other plans caused her to get over $400,000 in federal student loans forgiven. And you can see her testimonial on our website or on Facebook. And she's going to do a more recent one where her loans are actually gone. And this is actually beginning to happen, which is freaking awesome, frankly. I don't know if that answered your question, or if I just
that answers my question.
Got my own little shell game going on.
Because Corinna, I get it. I mean, and Corinna, when we're looking at this, and I know that there's just not enough time on today's show to kind of break it all down. But when we're looking at this, what do we say to the next generation? You're working right there. You're in direct contact with students and their families and whatnot. What are you saying to the next generation about this now?
scholarships, 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 scholarships. And that's why one of my good friends started the scholarship plug, right? Because there's so much money that goes unused. You could literally write one solid, great essay and just recycle it. I think a lot of times too, parents and families tend to forget about all the little other expenses that you're going to need. Maybe you just need that plane ticket or that bus ticket, or to buy like the stuff for your dorm, like $500, $1,000. All of that adds up, and there's so many things you can continue to do. So it's been our goal to try and avoid having to take out those loans, right? Because we've seen the effects of how this student loan debt is crippling us, right? We can't buy homes, we can't move forward in our lives. They're just so tied down. But now with this IDR, hopefully, we can start to alleviate some of that for students who are already, heavily burdened with this debt. But as far as the students who are looking to go into college, scholarships, there's so much out there. You don't have to take out the loans. You can reduce them. It's just a matter of making the effort and doing the work. You'll yield great results.
And Zach, very quickly, when you're talking about the implications, and this, of course, we're talking about this on this space, the implications to Black students, to Latino, Hispanic students, students who are part of communities who have often been disenfranchised and marginalized, you know what I mean, where they were looking. The president said that the Republicans took the hope. I mean, yeah, but at the same time, if you're talking to Black folks, Mr. President, the hope was taken a long time ago, not even before this moment. So how do we restore the hope and helping those students get back on track?
Yeah, that's a big question that I don't really know exactly how I would answer that. But I do want to touch on the scholarship piece. I think scholarships are the best way to go, and there are plenty of scholarships that are just not applied for and paid out because people just simply don't know about them. And if you do have student debt, I guess don't throw in the towel. Don't take the belief that there's nothing you could do about it. I think that knowing how to manage student debt correctly is the next best thing to a scholarship, kind of after the fact. And I actually say, if you do have to go with student loans, as paradoxical as this may sound, I would try to get as much student loans as you can to not have to like work crappy jobs and be stressed out and put like that added strain of finance and being stressed out while you're going to school. So you could really like go to school to do what you really love to do. Because I think that's super important to have not a job, but like a vocation, a dharma, something that is really a calling. And if you like just pick I see so many people, they pick a profession just so they can make money. And then they end up like not doing it anyway, and then doing what they love. And then they have the debt, and then they have to go back to school or try to learn what they love when they could have just started with that to begin with. Student loans are like the most benevolent debt you could get. And that's not being said in the mainstream, I guess, because if everyone could navigate this system intelligently, and there were ways to do it, I guess we used to call it like, gaming the system or hustling the system. There are ways to do it, and it's totally legal. There's loopholes everywhere. If you look, and if you find someone like me or my team, we could help you navigate it. And there are some attorneys that specialize in this area of consumer law called student loan law. But yeah, there's not many people whose interests are aligned with borrowers who have debt. People that have student loan debt typically don't have money to pay people. So if you follow the money, I don't know if you ever learned this, but this is something I've learned, is if you follow the money, things start to make a lot of sense, unless it's political, in which case it's like, doesn't really make direct sense, but then you just follow the money and crazy geopolitical type stuff.
Hey, come on, Zach. If you follow the money in the political space, it's going to make a lot of sense. It's going to make a lot of sense. It's going to make a lot of sense. Zach Geist, founder of Student Loan Tutor. Zach, again, what's the website? How can people get more information?
Yeah, studentloantutor.com, and check out our reviews. Check out, like research us. That's really what I recommend. And then once you do, if you want some help, call out. We'll talk to you for free. At least point you in some direction. We're not going to be like, hey, we need money, and we're not going to talk to you. And I'm also happy to come back here and we could just dive into like tons of details. My goal here was just, really what is in service to the most amount of people. And the most amount of people, the best thing is to not get disempowered by this news, because then you just kind of throw your hands up in the air and you feel like you really can't do anything. Look into that IDR one-time account adjustment. Make sure you consolidate any loans that are not direct loans by the end of by December 31st, that you do that. Anyone could do that, and that you come up with a plan to just understand that there's ways to navigate income-driven repayment in federal student loans. You shouldn't have a payment you can't afford. Maybe you won't even have any payment. And your interest rate, be careful not to just refinance until you know what your actual interest rate is, which we talked about could actually be 0% or less once loan forgiveness kicks in.
There it is. Zach, guys, thank you so much as always. Corinna, you got 30 seconds. What's the final remark you want to share?
I would just say, to Zach's point, we definitely need to find other alternatives, right? We can't just give up. There were already things out there to figure out how to alleviate the debt while we're still trying to get the actual debt relief, right? So we have to be vigilant and find alternatives. And again, scholarships. And, we just have to find what we can do in the meantime, right? Until we get that bigger debt relief. But there's still hope in many ways, despite this decision that, to be expected. Let's be honest.
Hey, Corinna, I think you and Zach have been saying the same thing. Don't, just because this might have happened on the federal level doesn't mean that you can't take ownership of your own circumstance, your own situation. I think that that's the direction that this country is really going, that we're slowly starting to no longer put all of our trust into the government or some forces outside of ourselves, that we're finally coming in and tapping into the power that we can change our own lives on the inside. So this is actually could be a good thing for the American people if we get the right guidance on how to get through it. Zach, guys, Corinna, Denise, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. Truly, truly appreciate it.
Thanks, Faraji.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Thank you. Well, thank you, Zach. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. Thank each and every one of you for being a part of the conversation. Make sure you do your due diligence. Go to blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free. Follow us on social media. And more importantly, support the work that we do. So just go to blackstarnetwork.com and you will see all of the great shows and programs that we do. And if you enjoyed the culture, show your support for the culture, financial support, sharing the information, sharing the streams, everything. You can definitely do it from blackstarnetwork.com. Also, keep in mind, folks, we're still looking at what's going on with the Supreme Court. There might be some protests. There might be some other activity. So keep your eyes on that stream. We will certainly keep you up to date on what's going on at Essence Fest. So Brother Roland is doing that. So it's a lot that we are doing on our end. Also follow me on social media at The Real Faraji on Instagram and at Faraji on Twitter. And I love to connect with you. Stay tuned. Up next, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will reconnect on Monday for another exciting edition of The Culture right here, only here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Have a great weekend. Peace.